computer. Well, hello, Shaun.
Hi there, Phil.
For those that don't know Shaun, could you introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Shaun Yaskiw, and I'm a member of the Order of Ministry, originally ordained in what was then the Conference of Manitoba Northwestern Ontario as a candidate from John Black Memorial United Church here in what was then the Winnipeg Presbytery. I currently serve as a chaplain in the Royal Canadian Chaplain Service, part of the Canadian Armed Forces. And some of you also might know me as Marcel and Joan's son. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad.
That's how I really got to know you. And we're wearing our poppies. Next week will be Remembrance Day, and my cat has joined us. It is a solemn day. It is a day that I might have to restate this question. It is a day for our country to remember, and it is a sacred day. Civilly for us, but also for the military. And I was wondering, can you speak to the importance of our country recognizing Remembrance Day?
Sure. Thanks for the question, Phil. So it's to say that we are heading into Remembrance Week, which culminates in the events that will take place on November the 11th. But many churches, you're quite right, both around the country and also Canadian Forces chapels will set aside time this upcoming Sunday, also to mark the events of Remembrance Week and what it means to remember. And this is a time where the sacred and the secular really do intersect. And it's an opportunity for us to gather as a community. In particular, within the United Church context, as a community of United Church peoples, to be able to remember, to mark, to commemorate those who have served in time of war, those who have lost their lives, those who have died, those whose families have been so irrevocably changed by the death of a loved one. For those who perhaps died many years ago, but also those whose families continue to have women and men who serve in uniform, who may have uncles and aunts who served abroad, who continue to serve. Who may have been injured, who may continue to suffer with injuries that are spiritual, that are physical, that are emotional, that mark their lives in an ongoing way. And so Remembrance Week, Remembrance Sunday, Remembrance Day is not only about events of the past, but it's also about an ongoing and lived reality for our church communities, for our nation as well.
My cat is really wanting some attention. I apologize, Shaun. I don't know how to get her to stop, but it is a good thing that I have the ability to mute. Okay, can you just calm down here? Apart from Remembrance and this week, I mean, this is we're recording this on. Is this All Souls Day today? Yes, it's All Souls Day.
This is All Souls Day.
All Souls Day, and which is marked in Christian calendars to some extent across the board. But what is the role of chaplaincy throughout the year? Where do you find yourself in the role of chaplaincy within the forces? And not just yourself, I guess chaplaincy as an office, but why is it so important to have chaplaincy as part of the forces?
There's lots of reasons. I mean, one of which is to acknowledge that the women and men of the Canadian Forces and their families who serve along with them all have a spiritual dimension to their lives. We explain that, we explore that in different ways. Some people do that through an organized religion, others do not. But there is a part of our being that strives to make sense of who we are, and that part of our lives that connects to the transcendent, to what some people would call holy mystery, others would call God. And in particular, those places in our lives where we experience grace, where we experience blessing, where we experience trauma and struggle and death and separation. And chaplains are a point of contact for those people, that we have a responsibility to ensure that the spiritual and religious needs of our members and of their families are met, no matter where they are, no matter where they are serving. And in some cases, that's easier than others. Some of our people, by the nature of their military service, happen to be happen to serve in places like Winnipeg, right, where they can pop down and see you and worship with your community. In other places, there are very few options, or there are not options where their own denomination is represented, right? I have a chaplain serving in Yellowknife, for example, at the moment, where he is the spiritual resource for those who are also posted to that what we call semi-isolated posting. Certainly there's lots of resources around him, and he can go to a church on Sunday morning, but he can't go to a Presbyterian church because there isn't one. So right now he does his church by Zoom. And that's what allows him to connect with his own spiritual tradition. But at the same time, it's simply to recognize that our members want to connect with that religious dimension in their lives, and chaplains are there wherever they are to help them do that. And that's not just a Sunday morning thing, that's an every day of the week thing. And certainly those individuals who are deployed on say perhaps say a ship serving in the North Atlantic or off the coast of Australia, they have spiritual needs as well. And so we wherever possible try to post chaplains to those, or deploy chaplains on those ships, so that those spiritual needs can be met. Individuals who are who might be on a what we would call domestic operation during the year. For example, if there's flooding going on and there's an operation to help bring relief to those who are working to protect their homes, and military personnel are deployed there, we'll endeavor to have chaplains out there with them also to help be with them as they are working long hours to bring relief to those who are struggling to safeguard their homes, their properties, their businesses. So it's to say that wherever our people are, chaplains go to accompany them to make sure that their religious and spiritual needs are met and their well-being is looked after.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I mean, you bring that up and it comes to mind this past year, different things that are happening around the world, but even here at home, where the military was called in to help with COVID outbreaks and situations. And we've had conversations in the past, and I want to let people into a bit of that conversation around that wherever our military is, our country is there, our representation is there, and that to remind ourselves of the yes, there is important distinctions between civil life and military life, but also where those things connect, and as a country where those things kind of connect. And I would wonder if you could speak to some of that, just and why maybe something like a Remembrance Day or Remembrance Week, and then for religious communities themselves to acknowledge that in their places of worship, which is always, that this is an awkward one for me, but why it is very important to bring these things and where their touch points are or where they overlap.
This is a really important thing for us to be always engaged in discussion about. I mean, the recognition that people, when they serve in uniform in the military for however long they do it, it is not as if they are removed from Canadian society and there's no ongoing connection. I mean, and we come from communities, towns, villages, churches, and continue to serve then in uniform as an extension of that fundamental identity that we have as citizens of this country and members of, in some cases, particular faith groups and individual churches. So when I serve as a chaplain in the Canadian Armed Forces, it's only because I continue to be a minister of the United Church of Canada who endorses me as an extension of that ministry that the United Church has and values, so that I can represent the United Church and the United Church ethos and theology and care for members of the United Church who serve in uniform, and also any person who comes to me who is looking for spiritual care and support. I do that out of my own identity as to who I am, and facilitate their worship, and then provide as best I can for them, or seek to put them in contact with somebody who's able to provide them with the actual religious needs, sacramental or what have you, that they require. But then also at the end of my time in uniform, I will return to the United Church in service as a continuation of that ministry. It's not as if the United Church ceases to have connection with me while I serve in uniform. There is an ongoing continuity, and that the United Church, as it were, lends me to the military, and the Canadian Armed Forces then exercises stewardship over me. I mean, we would use that language as the United Church, right? And then I will return. But so too, is it for anybody who serves in uniform? I mean, we retain a fundamental connection to these communities who have sent us, and we are an extension of Canada and Canada's values while we are in uniform. And so Canada continues to exercise oversight of us through the government of Canada and through its elected officials. But then also, Canadian citizens have an ongoing interest and stake, as it were, in the work that we do and the values that we uphold. And there needs to be that connection and continuity there. And Remembrance Day is one way in which Canada stops as a nation, and individual communities and citizens do, and say, these are our daughters, our sons, our aunts, our uncles, our grandparents, our friends, and we remember their service and the things that they have done on our behalf. And it's a way also of our acknowledging that interconnectedness, and in doing that, we also say that we will continue to remember you and care for you, not only when things are going well, but also acknowledging that sometimes things don't go well and people become injured. Sometimes in spirit, sometimes in mind, sometimes in body, and sometimes people die. And they have families, and they have loved ones, and they have friends. And we will work to continue to offer care to them. And in the same way that we have sent them off in time of war, and that's always a mixed thing, right? And in time of peace as well. And that's always a mixed thing, because we acknowledge that sometimes the circumstances are not what we would choose to do, but we also acknowledge that there is service to be done and work to be done, and certain responsibilities we have as a nation to other nations, in terms of our responsibility to journey alongside other nations as they deal with humanitarian disasters, civil disasters, failed and failing states, places where they are unable to protect their own citizenry for a variety of reasons. And so we as a nation agree, as part of our responsibility to the greater international structures to which we belong, including the United Nations, that we will send our own military personnel into other places to do difficult work. And we as a country accept collective responsibility for that. And part of that is acknowledging that sometimes people come back irrevocably changed, and that churches at a local level recognize that and say, well, maybe I don't know someone directly who's served, but I sure know so-and-so who has a cousin or a brother or a niece who served, and I know how hard it is for them. And so I'm gonna pray for them. I'm gonna reach out to them. I'm gonna connect with them and see how it is that I can offer them care and prayer and support, recognizing those ongoing links as well as historic ones.
Yeah, so one of so many things go through my mind when I talk to you about all this stuff. I mean, to touch a bit about my discomfort, it is not the lauding of service or acknowledging the courage and strength that it requires to serve one's country in such a way, and to serve certain ideals and represent and being called to go to places where other people are telling you what to do. But how we are also in a time and a culture context where it seems there is elements of the church universal, that is being taken over by a certain expression of patriotism that I struggle with, which seems to be less reflective of what you're saying, or how you process it, or even the solemnity of the endeavor itself, and that scares me and almost makes me react strongly the other way. Mm-hmm. And to fight that ideology, I must go the other way, where I'm feeling the need to distance myself from the realities of world countries having militaries. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Does that make any sense? Did I make any sense there? I don't know.
Oh, sure. Yeah, sure. There's a whole lot of things that one could say. A few things. I mean, the first of which is that these are public choices, and these are public decisions and public matters, and that we shouldn't we should not shy away from talking about them and being willing to talk about them, say, for ourselves as people of faith, out of the context of who we are and our identity as people who follow in the way of Jesus, right? And so we hold all of this intention, and we remember a whole host of things that Jesus said and Jesus did. We recall, that Jesus, when asked about taxes, said, "Give me a coin." And we note that he didn't have a coin, so he had to ask for someone to give him a coin. And so he takes the coin and says, "What do you see?" Well, on one side there's Caesar's face and Caesar's likeness. So, render to God the things that belong to God, and give to Caesar the things that belong to Caesar. And we recognize that much of the way we live out our lives is an expression of two sides of the same coin, right? That we always need to be attentive that there is this tension and this dynamic back and forth between things that belong to Caesar and things that belong to God. And it's not always easy to know what side of the coin you're looking at, right? But this tension is there. We also know that Jesus saw in at least one centurion a faith that he did not see in others, in the willingness of the centurion to entrust his daughter to Jesus' care. So we see that. We also see Jesus chastising, Peter for taking up the sword and lopping off and the ear, and to say that those who live by the sword will die by the sword. So we hold all of these things in tension, along with a whole host of other things that one could say. But it's we have to hold it all together and not just gravitate toward the passages that will give us the easy out, as it were. We also recognize in all of this that again, people who serve remain connected to us, and that we should always be cautious of those who would want to distance themselves from those who serve in various ways, including those who serve in political office and leadership, and say it's just about them. We recall that we are all connected, and that we can all hold one another to account. That we all should not be afraid to confess with one another, and also as Christians in the Reformed tradition, be willing to offer absolution to one another, and that we have a solidarity and an interconnectedness in our sinfulness, but also in our willingness to offer one another grace, and to accept responsibility for our actions. It is to say that this is all deeply mixed and difficult, but also that we are called to enter into the vulnerability and the brokenness of others. And sometimes that means being willing to risk the possibility of compromising ourselves and our ideals, to enter into the reality of the suffering of others, and the brokenness of others, and those who willingly put themselves into difficult and dangerous places because they see the possibility that they may be able to do a good.
Yeah.
And to recognize that what we see as a good is always compromised by very human choices and realities, and we can talk about that, but we also can risk that also has the very real possibility that if I'm willing to enter into the brokenness and suffering of someone else, I could possibly become damaged along the way. But it's only in the willingness to enter into the suffering of others, to be literally compassionate, right? To suffer with others. I mean, that is how God elects. I mean, God elects to work through broken vessels, right? Not just through ones that are whole. And that this is what part of our call is. And to be also willing to be called to account before the body of the faithful, right? Called back to the church, and to confess and receive the possibility of being called to repentance and walk in a different way.
Again, it spawns so many different things. Like one of the things I'm thinking about right now, I have no idea how I'm going to splice this, but I'll splice it. Don't you worry. They'll be a way. But I was thinking about Abraham Lincoln writing. I don't know if it's apocryphal or not, but I remember hearing, learning, being taught that Abraham Lincoln, by the time he was 11, had read the Bible front to back 3 times. And this, part of the legend that is Abraham Lincoln, the president under which the country had its bloodiest war, the Civil War, and where it was the country divided itself, and you had and him writing in, I don't know if it was a public address or what, but it was a prayer. It was both a prayer and a call out to God that essentially is God's will be done, whatever happens through all this, hoping that in the end, because both sides are calling and praying to the same God, as it were, that God's grace or God's goodness will prevail and God's desired plan for the nation happen. And it's hard to imagine that in a context of a civil war, where it's the same people belonging to, many of them, to the same denomination, fighting each other, right? So this isn't even religion against religion. By and large, this is the same group. And so that's part of it. And now I'm trying to think of, in today's time, the amount of cynicism that has invaded our public discourse and our institutions. And for good reasons, there's an unsettling of things, but there's also the introduction and the dissemination of misinformation, disinformation, and the sowing the seeds of distrust from citizen to citizen. And there's and how much we realize that our society requires trust in one another, and that being so eroded in so many facets. Has that kind of cynicism found its way into the military? Because I assume in the military command, yes, you've got hierarchies in the structures, but a certain kind of cynicism that you're also up against. Has that infiltrated, or is that some percolated in different ways?
I mean, certainly cynicism permeates our culture. I mean, and I mean, the military exists within our culture. It's not apart from it. It exists within it. And so I mean, cynicism. We are at a particular moment in our cultural time where cynicism is alive and well and flourishing. Certainly, I would say that as we again think about the context in which we're talking today. I mean, in preparation for Remembrance Sunday, it's All Souls Day. In preparing for Remembrance Sunday, are we able to again see ourselves as connected to remembrance now as a living thing? We don't talk perhaps as much as we might within the United Church about the communion of saints, though it is in our basis of union, and that language is in our song of faith and such, that we have a deep connection with all of those who have gone before, and in a way that is beyond our understanding, all of those who will come after. We are deeply connected to them, and that remembrance is not just about a list of names on a parchment on a wall that we have framed, and that we might, take a note of once a year. I mean, it's important that we take note of it, on Remembrance Sunday and such. But I mean, those names are say living witnesses, right, to people who lived and died as part of this greater communion of saints, to which we also have membership, and that. One of the things that cynicism tempts us to do is to see those with whom we might disagree or might have challenges with their beliefs or practices or activities or ideologies somehow as other, and as so different from them that we could never have any real connection with them, and we shouldn't even bother. We'll just write them off or not talk with them. But why bother with them? And cynicism at its worst can lead us to that place of temptation where we would say, I know you not. As Henry said to Falstaff, I know you not, old man, if you remember that from your high school Shakespeare lessons. So that is the great temptation. But we are called, right, to remember, right, that the Spirit connects us in ways that we do not always see, and that Remembrance Sunday is yet again, an opportunity for us to remember our connection to those people who left our churches and towns and villages and such in years past, those who continue to leave, and those who remain a part of us. We have those connections, and so can we find ways of seeing, new ways of seeing them, and perhaps being challenged and challenging what it means to be a nation who has sent those of us away, and as a nation that continues to send its daughters and sons to be a part of the military for a variety of reasons. And also continues to have at its heart people who have served, and who carry the marks of that service within them. And I mean, all of us, have been marked by our nation's military life in some way. So what is that? And what connects us? What are those ties that bind our hearts? And how can we acknowledge that this Sunday and Remembrance Day and in the days that go beyond it?
Yeah. I think that, these are all, there's no way we're going to be able to encapsulate everything and all, right? But I shouldn't have moved because it's going to look like a jump cut and it'll be spliced and it'll look weird. But one of the questions, maybe this will be the last one and then I can stop recording. But
sure.
You yourself are quite high up in chaplaincy. I don't want to put you on the spot and put you on, which tier, but quite high, which means that on especially this week and this day, there will be, I'm assuming, I shouldn't just assume, but I'm assuming that you're going to be involved with programs and required to be on, as it were, and to lead and to be present for different different services. And you carry a weight with that, and wondering, and you know this from as a minister, just sometimes when you're put in these positions, you're there for others. So then where do you go for your own nourishment, or how do you find yourself being served in this time, for this week, for that day? And so you, Shaun and Yaskiw, son of Joan and Marcel, how are you served, or how are you fed?
Well, it's a really important question, and thank you for it. I'm very fortunate in that as a chaplain, I work in a team with other chaplains, and so I have those chaplains who I directly support, but I also have colleagues of long standing who I can turn to for my own support. I'm also quite blessed that I have military leaders to whom I act as an advisor, but who are also good enough to check in. Even as I'm checking in on them, they're checking in on me and saying, who cares for the chaplain? And as they would, even by asking the question, you're recognizing the need. Thanks for asking. And then we go on to talk about that. And then of course, most importantly, I have my family, right, who provides me with my own support and my own care and nurture, and so that's also an important part of who I am, and we're very much looking forward to being able to finally be back in church on Sunday after a long 18 months away. Because of course of public health restrictions have not allowed us to worship in person for quite a long time. That is now beginning to shift, and so we're looking forward to that in the weeks to come, that we'll finally be able to be back in church. Won't be able to sing in public yet, but that'll come in time. We will resist the urge and I guess kind of hum along internally for a while, but we remain connected. Again, we remain connected to our own local United Church that we attend, because again, though I serve in uniform on an ongoing basis, we continue to be nested and supported in our own local United Church community, and that provides to myself and also to my family our own spiritual support.
That is wonderful. Thank you for this. Any last thoughts that you'd like to share?
The last thoughts again are thanks for the opportunity to chat, Phil, and thank you to St. Mary's Road and for your congregation's ongoing prayers. Again, the very fact that I'm able to serve in uniform is because the United Church endorses me to do it, and that the work that I do on an ongoing basis really is an extension of your ministry. And so thanks for your ongoing support and your ongoing prayer in that ministry. God bless you all, and thank you for how you are recognizing and commemorating Remembrance Sunday, Remembrance Week, and Remembrance Day on the 11th.
Thank you, Shaun, and as a friend and colleague and fellow clergy, I offer my deepest blessings on you and Steph and Luca, and hope that when you do return to your in-person worship, as John Wesley would have us do in these COVID times, is to hum lustily and with good courage under that mask. Anyways, thank you. This is wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil.